Welcome to the Putting the Human Back into Technology podcast with Gethin Ellis and Mark Williams. Here at gethinellis.com, whilst we know physical fitness is essential, our mental health is vital too, and our PHIT podcast is all about putting the human back into technology, aka PHIT. Now, one thing we can probably all agree on is the last year or so has been unprecedented, so we wanted to seek out the views of technology leaders, business owners, consultants, and many others from a range of different businesses and organisations to discuss with them the impacts on their business, their humans, and their technology and how they see the future unfolding. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Carl Grieves, and in this episode, Mark is joined by our colleague, Rachel Ashibi.
Hi, I'm Mark Williams, and I'm today's host of Gethin Ellis's PHIT Podcast. And on today's episode, I'm going to welcome Carl Grieves. Carl, hello.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you very much. And also my co-host, Rachel Ashibi. Rachel, hello.
Yeah. Hi, hello.
Hi. So we'll get straight into it, Carl. Rachel, if you'd like to ask the first question.
Yes. Okay, Carl, I'm really looking forward to knowing about you. It's quite unfortunate I can't actually get my video through. But now, so Carl, can you tell me a little about you, what you do, your sort of business? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Good, easy question to start with. So, I'm the division director for what is known as Clear Course Membership Services. And Clear Course Membership Services are a set of 7 businesses that provide membership management platforms and digital services and payments actually to the membership sector. So the membership sector are professional bodies, trade unions, arts and heritage organisations, and some charities. And Clear Course is a group of companies that's in 5 different divisions, and I'm the lead of one of those divisions. The division is, as I say, 7 businesses, 6 membership platforms, 6 CRM platforms, 1 digital agency, now 300 people with about 400 customers in the UK.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So have you got I've wanted to ask you this for a little while, because obviously I think that came about 3 or 4 months ago or something like that, Carl, didn't it? At least that's when it appeared to be noticed on LinkedIn. So obviously you and I know each other through your MD-ship of Silverbear. That's one of those organisations, and I guess possibly a fair old chunk of that. So have you taken on the sort of the P&L responsibility and the full people responsibility, for that? Is that how Clear Course are bringing this all together, or is it still like a group of individual organisations?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and yeah, we have known each other for a while, and I suppose my formative years in the sector were through Silverbear, and Silverbear are a dynamics partner to professional bodies and trade unions and to the arts, and I've been there 8 years, and I'm in their building today. So yeah, that's where this journey kind of started. We built the Silverbear business up, and then the business was acquired by Clear Course, which is now the group of companies. So my role is I have the ultimate responsibility for vision, strategy, the P&L, the finances, all of the customers, the whole thing. And I've got 2 great management teams, obviously, and great people right across the whole organisation. So I lead that division now.
So let me move us on to the second question. This is written about thinking about the last year, but it's a little bit longer than that now. I think it's probably the best part of 18 months or so that we've been in this situation, and are hopefully coming out at the end of it. But what so thinking about the people side and perhaps the technology side as well, and I guess I probably have to qualify most of these questions and say that naturally I'm asking you, as you're the leader of a collection of businesses now, and business as I knew you, but you're also providing the sort of consulting and solution services to to a whole bunch of organisations. So you might choose to answer the questions on behalf of you and your organization and or your clients. It's equally fine, if you so wish. But what lessons do you think you'll take forwards, and how do you see some of those things being delivered?
Okay. And I think I'll answer it both from a technology perspective and then from a people perspective, because I think there's lots of lessons on both parts of that, really. From a technology perspective, the value of the technology we provide now, I think, is the highest it's ever been, and probably higher than ever. We provide digital platforms that underpin the relationship that organizations have with their members. And when we went into the pandemic, it became very clear very quickly that the technology needs to work in a fully distributed remote way. And it was really the first time that the technology had ever been stress tested in that way, right? So it was important that everybody could go home and everybody could access everything that they accessed whilst they were in the office. And what that created was a significant higher value in the solution than probably organizations perceived in the past, because it just worked, right? But
thankfully it did, yes.
It just worked, and we knew it would work, but it had never been tested, And one of the organizations we worked with, they sent 800 people home, and they had access to, exactly the same systems they had whilst they were in the office. So I think the value, or certainly the perceived value of the technology, kind of skyrocketed when the pandemic hit. I think also the value of it massively increased because organizations raced to digitize all of their content.
True.
So whether it would be their online learning, or their exams and certification, or whether it be things like the application process for members or for members to join. What we found with all of our clients is they immediately needed to further digitize their offering. And actually, we had a couple of real notable customers, and I won't name customers by name, but we had one organization that's the registrar for social care, and there was an immediate government directive for social workers to be able to register themselves in a pretty much a 72-hour period without paying the fees that they paid in the past, or without going through the kind of paper-based type application process they've been through in the past. So, we had a few examples where customers immediately needed to change their application process, immediately needed to put content and courses online. And actually, with the digital platforms that we were providing, it was relatively easy to move from a kind of in-person paper-based type processes to fully digital processes. So from a technology perspective, it's been particularly compelling. I guess part of the question is, what lessons have we learned from that? And actually, the lesson that we've learned across all of the businesses, and Silver Bear being one of those businesses, is we really need to ensure we have a customer enablement strategy from now on, right? Or from a year ago. And what do I mean by that? It's making sure as organizations that implement technology, which is what we do, we put much more time and effort into enabling the customer on that technology once that technology's gone live, right? Because we need to make sure that everybody can use it. Everybody has the appropriate user guides and online tutorials and all of those things that they need. So yeah, our business has changed quite dramatically, I think, in the last 12 months, where we're putting significant focus into enabling the customers we already have. We still bring new customers into the businesses, right? But we certainly don't bring new customers into the businesses as much as we spend time and effort now making sure that our existing customers have got all of the tools around them to help them to use the technology in front of them. So it's been a bit of bit of a step change there, really, which is good.
I think that's really interesting, Carl. I mean, you may have seen on one or two of my sporadic posts on LinkedIn that I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about let's call it basic technology generally. I'm generally talking about Word or Excel or email or something of that sort of nature. But the same absolutely applies to CRM systems and ERP systems, and and any sort of tool that is being provided to help people do their business. But basically, I would be in my bonnet about actually helping people to get the best out of that technology. And I think that's there's we all know that we could all find better things, more automated ways of doing something in Word or PowerPoint or whatever than we're used to, but we just use it in the way that we're used to using it, and that's us as users. And I think it's really good to hear. Firstly, that sounds like the direction of travel that you've been going in, to help people to do it. But how do you do it? Because back in the day. I'm a little bit older. I won't say wiser than your good self, but we've both had a fair old history in this in this world. Back in the day, you used to have user groups and things like that, and people would grudgingly go along to a user group, and they'd usually gripe about something or other and ask you how to fix a fault. But this isn't that, is it? You're driving at genuinely helping people how to best get that from their technology. So are you putting on events, or are you making content available to them, or how are you intending to do it? Or
and you're absolutely right, because in an office environment, people could always rely on the person they sat next to them, or they could get the kind of swivel chair support from somebody else in the room. And actually, when you send thousands, millions of people home, they're on their own. So actually, our role in that actually needs to become immediately more supportive. So what did we do? We provided all of our training online, obviously, but we recorded all of it, and then we gave all of that training back to the customers, and we indexed it. So we recorded it, indexed it, and then provided a library of video tutorials back to the customer, so the customer could then distribute that out to all of the users. We've introduced some certification as well. So we've got learner management systems now that enable people to go through a learning journey.
Okay.
So rather than in the old days, 18 months ago, you would turn up with 6 other people, go through a 3-day training course, leave at the end of it knowing everything you need to know. And then to be honest, maybe in 2 weeks, forget everything that you've been taught, right? So now it's just content. We record everything we do. As I say, we provide the user guides, the indexed tutorials, all of those things. And we've also moved across most of the businesses now where we present open webinars to customers every 2 weeks. Right.
Wow. Okay.
If you went on to the Silverbear website or the APT website or the Miller web, the Miller website, whichever company it will be, we're providing kind of continuous open.
So they're like a drop-in session, are they? People can just turn up if they want to.
Yeah. And they're really well received. So it's a big step change for us. Big step change to adapt to supporting people who are effectively sitting on their own, who no longer have the support of the people around them, basically. I think the other part of your question is around people, right? So what's the impact being to people?
Yeah.
And I'll talk about the business side of this rather than the customer side of this. And I think it's been amazing, really, right? Because my view of life is people are just so resilient, right? We sent everybody home, effectively 300 people home overnight, and people's resilience to that, to just get on with the job and adapt to the new way of working is just second to none. And that served us well and continues to serve us well now. And we have a fully distributed workforce now. And I've said this to the business many times, and I'll say it to you. Long gone are the days now where we've got 60 people driving to Guildford at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, right? There's just no need for that. So, it's the other thing I've said to the business a number of times as well is that this pandemic is as difficult and as tragic and as hard as it's been for so many people. For workplace culture, I think it's moved us forward 2 decades. Yeah, because actually now we have people distributed at home, around the UK with a work-life balance that actually they've never been able to achieve in the past, right? So there's a significant amount of positives that we should continuously protect now to make sure people have the work-life balance, that they all now enjoy. So people are resilient, I think, is one point, and they've just been fantastic and just got on with the job and made it work. I think the other point, though, is around company culture. And actually what I've learned in the last, what I'm learning all the time in the last few months is company culture can be a little bit fragile now, because actually people have spent so much time away from their colleagues. And actually, when you look at new starters who come into the organization as well, it's quite difficult to get new people to understand what the culture is of the organization that they're joining, because the people aren't around them to, have a laugh and a joke with and a chat and all of those things. So I'm very, very cognizant to protect what we've been able to achieve in terms of workplace culture and giving people the right balance of home versus office. But I'm also very keen to make sure that we protect the culture and we maintain the culture of these organizations. So we've moved very recently to a position where we're asking people to come back some days per week. We're not prescribing what some is, but some is 1 or more. And we need to do that because we need to protect the culture that these organizations have built up over many years. And we also need to do that, to be candid, because, and again, I've said this to the businesses many times, you can't assume if you're sat at home working 5 days a week and you're really happy with that your peers, your team and your colleagues feel the same way, all right? So I'm asking everybody to come back to the office some days a week because they need to be acutely aware of the mental health and well-being of everybody else in the business, right? So we're learning as we go. We're back to school today, right? Kids are back to school today, so it's kind of, when I talk to the business next week, I'm going to talk a bit about back to school, back to office, and ask people to just make sure they're here 1 day a week at least. And I think that way we'll maintain the culture that some of these businesses are built up over 10 years, right? So the lesson learned, we need to be, we can't take the culture for granted, I think, is one lesson learned. And as business people or business leaders, we just need to quite proactively protect that and make sure people come back to the office a bit. Yeah.
It's quite. I'll let Rachel get a word in a second. But I hadn't actually thought of that before. But that you get lots of stuff, don't you, about culture eats strategy for breakfast and all those sorts of posts that go out on the various social media type things. But I just wonder whether with everybody being dispersed and distributed, as you say, whether I don't know, quite know how to phrase it. Hopefully you'll get my gist. That whether there's a sort of a leveling of cultures across businesses, almost like a mid-Atlantic type thing, where because you haven't got the coffee, the chat over a coffee, it's like this, that, and the other here. Is everybody a bit more I want to say formal almost, but I don't quite mean that when they're interacting over these sorts of dialogues, and so I'm really genuinely interested in that cultural point, because there is a culture in Silverbear and it's a good culture. I know less of the other organisations that you're dealing with, but I'm genuinely wondering how that is going to develop going forwards.
Yeah, and it's a bit of formality. I mean, I'd like to say actually it's really productive, right? So it's super productive. All of these businesses are super productive now because people don't have the big commutes that they had in the past. People go from one Teams meeting to another. Our customer engagement is all online as well, and it's super efficient or super productive. However, it can just be a bit routine as well, right? I think that's part of the problem. So it can be a bit formal, or I'll be brave enough to say it can just be a little bit boring, because there's no real connection between people. People aren't sat, in and around each other and having a laugh and a joke, right? So we need to find a balance between the two. And don't get me wrong, we are in a much better, healthier, workplace culture type place today than we were a year ago. And as I've said, I think we're 10, 20 years ahead of where we would have been without this happening.
Yeah.
But we need to ensure that your work is not just productive and not just formal, right? There's a big social part of that we need to be proactive with.
Okay, well, let's move us on to question 3, which is probably segueing. I can't even say the word. Segueing more to the first half of your answer in the last one. But Rachel, do you want to pop into question 3?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Carl. I mean, it's fascinating to think how technology has really evolved and how it has changed all our lives. But for the sake of our viewers, I'm just going to be very direct and ask the next question, if you don't mind. Okay, so do you think users have grown in their confidence in using technology since lockdown?
Okay. I think they have grown in confidence of using the technology. I think also they've just grown in confidence of the technology, right? And I think in some ways, it mirrors a little bit what I talked about in the previous question. I'm pleased to say now, and I've been in I've been in this industry a while as well, Mark, right? I've been in this industry for over 20 years. And I'm pleased to say now, really, the technology just works. And actually, our customers have grown in confidence of the technology because it has been stress tested, because it has sent everybody home, and because it has just kept working. So all of our organizations see, all of our customers see, I think, a massively increased value in what they have, and a much higher degree of confidence in the technology and the stability of that, and the processing power of those things. So at a transactional level, the platforms that we provide to our customers transact billions of pounds worth of payments, right? And generally it just works, right, these days. A few of our organizations are Microsoft partners, and Microsoft have talked for a while about continuous product life cycles, which means you never need to upgrade these platforms again. They're true SaaS platforms in that way. And they talk about low code, no code development, where customers can self-serve and help themselves. And actually, you know what, they're just right. Generally, once it's set up, it just runs. It processes the payments it needs to process. It continuously upgrades 2 times a year. It does all of those great things. So organizations have I think the summary is organizations have grown confidence of the tech. With regards to users, again, mirroring a little bit about what I talked about before, I think through necessity, the users have become more confident in the technology because they've had to rely on actually themselves and us to use it, because they don't have that kind of swivel chair support that they had in the past. So yeah, I mean, confidence grows all the time, but through necessity of people having to self-serve, and through some of the the support programs that some of our businesses deliver, then yeah, in summary, yes, they have grown in confidence. Yeah.
I quite like that. Again, I'd like talking to you because I always think of things that I haven't thought about before. I quite like that phrase, of the technology. And I guess I'll go on to the next question, but so I'm not going to allow you much chance to respond to this, Carl. But I guess what I'd say is that I think there's something in that about the platform itself and those ISVs that are then producing solutions on that platform. And we're talking about the Microsoft platform here, which is a very robust, stable platform. And I guess my cynical observation would be that's true in that world. It does just work. It's not necessarily true in other areas, and I think there's a benefit there, to customers from that. The worry I have, I guess, and it's not a worry for today. So I think I probably agree with you that organisations are seeing more value from that technology, but in a year or 2 or 3 years' time, it will have just worked for a year or 2 or 3 years longer, and it'll be an interesting question about what the customers perceive as value at that point in time, because they're just going to expect that, that will be the norm. Whereas over the last 15, I will let you answer that, what you're thinking is, but that the last 15 months they've gone, oh bloody hell, this is good. I can get this from the technology, but the benchmark will have moved up, won't it, in 2 or 3 years' time, when it'll be interesting to see what the next value thing is that your good selves and Microsoft and so on will have to do.
Well, yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more in the program about digital transformation. And I've got a fairly strong view about digital transformation being that there's 3 pillars to it. People, process, and technology. And the technology part of it's fine. But what I'll say now, in anticipation of part 2, is we all need to do better focusing on the people and the process part.
Yeah.
Because technology is only one part of this service and the offering we provide, right?
Well, let's save that for part 2. Concluding this section, then, what's the best piece of business or career advice you've ever been given?
Right. Yeah, I thought about this. I mean, I've worked with some great leaders over the years, right? So there's lots of advice and things that I've absorbed over the years that have helped me immensely, to be fair, over the last 2 decades. One that stands out for today, I suppose, is I worked for a leader over a decade ago who told me to own the customer, right? And that was his headline: own the customer. And over time, I think there's 2 reasons for that being a good piece of advice for me, is if you own the customer, you're ultimately owning where the value sits, right? And what does that mean? Well, if you have a good relationship with all of your clients, if you know all of your clients, if you go to battle for your clients, if you support your clients, that's where the value is, right? And that's where the value is for organizations financially. Let's be honest about it. They pay our bills and help make sure we can pay our wages. It's where the value sits in terms of what the market demands. The innovation, the requirements that customers need. So it drives our roadmap. So it drives our financials. It drives our roadmap. So I have spent, and this, Mark, because you were a client of mine back in the day, and I have spent very consciously a significant amount of time making sure I keep abreast of the clients and I know the clients, and that all probably falls under the strap line of owning the customer, because it drives everything, right? So I think that's the point. So that served me well, and my career has progressed over the years as well on the back of, to be honest, on the back of that. I also think the other reason to do it, and this is a little bit self-serving, but for people who are listening who are going through a career pathway and want to, become a managing director or an owner, or build a business, buy a business, run businesses. I think at a professional level, it's kind of where your leverage is, right? Because if you own the customer and you know the customer, and the customer knows you and respects you and knows you'll support them, and as I say, go the extra mile for them, it makes you kind of like inside of a business probably the most informed, people inside of the business, because you know what the market wants, and you know where the customer relationships all are. And yeah, it helps you be a business leader, right? Because ultimately you are directly connected to where the value of your business comes from. So, you know, that's, yeah, I with the risk of rambling a little bit, that served me well. And I have, you know, I think, to summarize, I have very consciously in the last 15 years made sure that I am continuously connected to the customers, because ultimately, you know, if it wasn't for them, we don't have anything, right?
We certainly don't. And I one of the phrases that historic phrases that, you know, the customer's always right. I've never subscribed to that, but I do think the customer comes first. And I think that's, you know, I think that's kind of a similar thing to what you're saying. And what I would say in closing this in this section, you know, Carl, is that that I believe that, you know, with the one or two clients that I've worked with yourself on, that myself and those clients have been a beneficiary of you owning that owning that customer, you know, and we've got things done that, frankly, you know, would have been definitely pushing water uphill, you know, in some of those occasions. So I'm glad you took that advice on board, you know, when you were whoever gave it to you, you know, many years ago. So that brings us to the end of part one, and we'll be back with part two.